It was a calm autumn night in one of the most expensive neighborhoods on Long Island. Inside a mansion on Middle Lane, millionaire Ted Ammon was at home. The alarm was turned off, the house seemed quiet, and nothing looked out of place. But by the next day, everything had changed. What was found inside that bedroom would shock the Hamptons and reveal a story filled with jealousy, money, and betrayal. This wasn't just bad luck. It was something much closer to Ted than anyone wanted to believe. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers: 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. Robert Theodore Ammon, known to everyone simply as Ted, was born on August 30th, 1949 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His father, Robert Ammon, worked as a pension coordinator at Shenango Furnace Company on Neville Island, while his mother, Betty Lee Morris, devoted herself to the home. Betty was known for her sharp mind and high standards, and she pushed her children to look beyond the basics, encouraging them to challenge themselves and dream bigger than what was expected. Ted grew up alongside his older sister Sandy. She was both his first companion and his first competitor. When Sandy sat at the piano, practicing diligently, Ted often surprised everyone by reproducing the melodies almost effortlessly after hearing them only once. From the start, his natural ability stood out. Whether it was academics, sports, or hobbies, Ted excelled. The Ammons created a nurturing household, one that rewarded achievement and cultivated Ted's boundless curiosity. His early years unfolded between the calm of New Jersey's shore towns and family visits to Iowa. Life in the 1950s suburban landscape was steady, but Ted always seemed destined for something greater. In his teenage years, the family relocated to Aurora, New York, after his father accepted a new position. At his new school, Ted quickly adapted. He was charismatic, popular, and well-liked. Girls noticed him, friends admired him, and his teachers respected both his work ethic and his confidence. Still, like many teenagers, he hadn't yet decided which path to pursue. In 1967, Ted entered Bucknell University, initially enrolling in the architecture program. But he soon realized his interests leaned elsewhere, and he switched to economics, graduating in 1971. His college years were marked not only by academics, but also by leadership. He joined the Phi Gamma Delta fraternity, played varsity lacrosse, and became president of the student body. The role demanded responsibility, negotiation, and charisma, qualities that would later define his professional and personal life. After graduation, Ted joined Bank of America's executive training program. His sharp intellect carried him further than most. In fact, without ever attending law school, he studied independently and passed the New York bar exam on his first attempt, a remarkable accomplishment that spoke volumes about his determination and intellect. It was during this time that he met Randi Day, a fellow ambitious professional. The two married in 1973, setting out together with optimism for a bright future. Their work soon took them abroad, and they spent several successful years in London, where they earned comfortable salaries and built careers. London life was fast-paced but rewarding. Eventually, they returned to New York, where their ambitions continued to grow. But success often came with sacrifice. The long hours, frequent travel, and relentless demands of their professional lives slowly eroded their bond. What once felt like a strong marriage gradually shifted into something more like a close friendship. In 1983, after a decade together, Randy initiated the divorce. Ted had hoped they could repair what they had, but Randy was firm in her belief that their marriage no longer held meaning. The separation from Randy had been civil, and both went on to rebuild their lives. For Ted Ammon, that meant doubling down on his career. He was already ambitious, but now he became unstoppable. After leaving law, he shifted his focus toward the fast-paced world of investment banking. In 1984, Ted joined Kohlberg, Kravis, Roberts and Company, better known as KKR. At the time, KKR was transforming into one of the most powerful private equity firms of the decade, and Ted's talent fit perfectly within its high-pressure environment. He earned a reputation quickly, admired for his sharp intellect and his rapid-fire approach to deal-making. Among the monumental transactions he worked on was the $31 billion leveraged buyout of RJR Nabisco, a corporate battle that would later be immortalized in the best-selling book Barbarians at the Gate. Ted's ability to dissect complex financial structures and think several steps ahead of everyone else secured his place among the titans of Wall Street. His years at KKR brought not only prestige but also immense personal wealth, yet Ted was never content to stay in someone else's shadow. After leaving the firm, he channeled his expertise into launching ventures of his own. These included Big Flower Press, a successful printing company, and Chancery Lane Capital, a boutique private equity firm. Both projects allowed Ted to continue chasing his passion for investments and strategy, this time outside the constant glare that came with KKR's high-profile deals. It was during this period of professional triumph that Ted's personal life took an unexpected turn. In 1984, while searching for an apartment, he scheduled a viewing but missed the appointment due to work demands. The next day, he called to apologize to the real estate agent, and another meeting was arranged. That rescheduled appointment would change everything, because it was there that Ted first met Generosa. She was younger, intelligent, and immediately captured his attention. They went out for coffee after the viewing, and their connection was instant. Within a month, they had moved in together. Generosa threw herself into decorating their apartment, showcasing her natural artistic flair. But their relationship soon faced a crossroads. Generosa longed for marriage, while Ted, still fresh from his divorce, wasn't ready to commit. After a year, she gave him an ultimatum: marry her or walk away. Ted refused, and the two parted. Generosa's disappointment ran deep. She even called Ted's family to share her frustration, but fate intervened. A month later, they crossed paths again, this time at an art museum. Generosa was with another man, and the sight unsettled Ted. He realized he couldn't let her go. Shortly after, he proposed. They married in 1986, beginning a union that would eventually become both glamorous and turbulent. Generosa's background was complex. She had been born in California into a family that encouraged independence and creativity. From an early age, she displayed an artistic streak, especially in painting and design, passions that would remain central throughout her life. Yet behind her talents and charm was a difficult childhood shaped by instability. Her mother, Mary, was a mercurial figure. Family members suspected she suffered from bipolar disorder. Mary had grown up in a devout and well-to-do household, and at one point even entered a convent. But after a year, she abandoned the religious life entirely, trading quiet devotion for parties, men, and a restless social calendar. Financial support came from her businessman brother after their parents died, so money was never an obstacle. In 1945, Mary married a soldier and had 2 children, but she showed little interest in them, preferring the excitement of her social life. Her husband, worn down by constant arguments, eventually left, and he didn't take the children with him. Mary remarried and had another daughter, but the marriage dissolved, leaving her on her own once again. Generosa was her last child. She never knew her biological father, an Italian sailor her mother had met at a party. Their affair lasted barely a week. Though they exchanged addresses, he never responded when Mary informed him of the pregnancy. It became common knowledge that Mary's husband at the time was not the father of her youngest daughter. Generosa was named after her absent father. Her early years were anything but easy. Mary continued to live freely, often bringing men into the home, while paying little attention to her children. Some accounts even suggest troubling behavior from Mary's partners toward the children, though whether Mary knew or cared is unclear. What was clear was her indifference. The children were not her priority. Growing up in this environment, Generosa learned to fend for herself. She carried within her both the resilience forged by hardship and the creative energy her mother's family encouraged. Those qualities, combined with her beauty and charm, would one day propel her into the glamorous but volatile life she shared with Ted Ammon. When Generosa was just 10 years old, her mother died of cancer. The loss was devastating. Her older siblings soon began their own independent lives, leaving Generosa and her younger sister to be placed first with an uncle and later with other relatives. The absence of her mother marked her deeply, shaping her resilience and her outlook on life. As she grew, Generosa developed into a strong-willed, ambitious, and highly intelligent young woman. Friends and acquaintances often remarked that she carried her mother's same fiery temperament and unpredictability. She was determined not just to survive, but to thrive. And wealth, as much as artistic recognition, became one of her goals. Those who knew her during her teenage years described her as both captivating and challenging, someone who could be ruthless in the pursuit of what she wanted. Despite her complicated personality, she never let go of her dream of becoming an artist. After finishing school, Generosa moved to New York City, where she set her sights on the art world. To sustain herself in the city, she took on work as a real estate agent, a profession that demanded confidence and sharp instincts. The Manhattan property market was notoriously cutthroat, dominated by seasoned professionals, but Generosa held her own. Her charisma and determination allowed her to thrive, even in such an unforgiving environment. Though Ted Ammon's wealth could have provided her with a life of leisure, Generosa continued to work and push forward with her creative passions. Ted supported her endeavors, even opening a photography studio for her where she could nurture her artistic side. She enjoyed being part of New York's cultural and social circles, often hosting gatherings that, to some, appeared as much about showcasing wealth as they were about companionship. Eventually, the couple began thinking about children, but conceiving proved difficult for Generosa. After years of disappointment, in 1992, they chose another path: adoption. They traveled to Ukraine and adopted 2-year-old twins, a boy named Greg and a girl named Alexa. By that time, Ted had amassed around $50 million through his ventures, and the Ammon family lived in complete comfort. Greg and Alexa grew up surrounded by privilege. They were enrolled in elite schools, given every opportunity money could buy, and raised in an expansive East Hampton estate that Ted and Generosa designed and built. On the surface, it looked like a picture-perfect family. Yet inside the home, conflict was constant. Generosa could be quarrelsome, easily upset, and often difficult to appease. In the early years of their marriage, Ted had handled her temper with patience, but over time, the strain became heavier. Generosa's emotions frequently veered toward malicious or sarcastic behavior, and she often taunted Ted by comparing him to men even wealthier than he was. When Ted suggested therapy, she refused outright. Her jealousy was another issue that plagued their marriage. She monitored her husband's movements obsessively, reading his correspondence, checking his phone, and confronting him if she suspected even the smallest sign of infidelity. If Ted showed interest in other women, or if she believed he did, her reactions were explosive, marked by anger and emotional outbursts. By the late 1990s, Ted began opening up to friends and family about divorce. Their marriage had become increasingly toxic, and the conflicts were escalating. In 1999, the couple moved to Surrey, England, purchasing a manor called Coverwood. The move was meant as a fresh start, a chance to rebuild their relationship in a new environment and give the twins stability. Generosa poured her energy into redesigning the property, while Ted continued commuting weekly to New York to manage his business ventures, including Big Flower Press. But the physical distance mirrored their emotional one. Ted spent only weekends in England, while Generosa grew more suspicious and increasingly paranoid. Her jealousy soon took a darker turn. She discovered a divorce lawyer's invoice on Ted's desk and was convinced he was having an affair. Generosa reportedly hired private investigators to follow him and later claimed that he was romantically involved with a glamorous New York investment banker who specialized in leveraged buyouts. She went as far as accusing this woman of having Ted's child, a claim that was never substantiated. In 2000, Generosa filed for divorce. She demanded half of Ted's fortune, valuing it at $300 million, though his actual assets were closer to $100 million. The legal battle quickly became bitter. Generosa returned to New York with the children, and the couple began living separately. Reports later suggested that during this time she manipulated the twins against their father, making visitation increasingly difficult. The divorce dragged on with constant disputes, Generosa challenging every detail and accusing Ted of hiding his true wealth. Even so, she was far from destitute. Ted provided her with a Manhattan property to renovate, along with substantial child support payments. But in Generosa's eyes, it was never enough. During the renovation of the Manhattan townhouse, Generosa Ammon crossed paths with a man who would change everything, Daniel Pelosi. Daniel was a contractor, a jack-of-all-trades who took on electrical and handyman jobs, though he wasn't a licensed electrician. At 38, he was 7 years younger than Generosa. From the beginning, Ted disliked him, especially because Daniel spent time with Greg and Alexa. For Ted, it wasn't just jealousy. He saw Pelosi as a dangerous presence around his children. And Ted wasn't wrong to be concerned. By the time he entered Generosa's life, Daniel already carried a troubled history. He had prior assault convictions, was caught stealing electricity worth $43,000 from the Long Island Power Authority, and faced multiple harassment and menacing allegations. He'd been arrested for drunk driving, struggled with alcohol and prescription drugs, and his addictions had shattered his first marriage. With 3 children of his own and a divorce underway, it appeared Daniel had decided to secure his future another way, by attaching himself to someone wealthy. Generosa knew Ted despised him, and that almost seemed to fuel her determination. She flaunted the relationship, perhaps hoping to make Ted jealous. But Ted's primary concern was different. He feared for the safety of his children. He saw Daniel living off his fortune, driving a Porsche and residing in a townhouse he had purchased, and it enraged him. Ted tried to reason with Generosa, but she wouldn't hear it. To the twins, Daniel was tolerable, even likable, though their mother's manipulation increasingly widened the rift between them and their father. With little left to do, Ted turned to the only weapon he had: money. He withheld child support, reversed earlier property arrangements, and revealed that his true net worth was closer to $30 million, not the $100 million or even $300 million that Generosa had claimed. Still, her expectations were relentless. She demanded that Ted cover not only child support, but every expense tied to the children: private schooling, household bills, even a nanny. By the time the divorce settlement was drafted, she stood to receive between $20 and $25 million, along with $21,000 a month in child support. Yet even then, she was dissatisfied. Before the ink could dry, tragedy struck. On October 20th, 2001, Ted Ammon, 52 years old, was found murdered in his East Hampton mansion. His chauffeur and business partner discovered the body. Ted was lying naked on his bed, his skull fractured from multiple blows. The alarm system had been disabled. There was no sign of forced entry, pointing to someone who knew the home well. The investigation began immediately. Generosa inherited his $97 million fortune, and just 3 months later, she married Daniel Pelosi. Suspicion turned toward her at once. She had motive, and witnesses recalled her openly saying Ted deserved to die. Yet she had an alibi, and the brutal nature of the attack suggested a strong hand, someone like Daniel. Soon, testimony began piling up. Construction workers claimed Generosa had offered $50,000 to have Ted beaten. Christopher Perino, an acquaintance of Daniel, testified that on the night of the murder, he drove with Pelosi to Ted's home. Daniel told him to wait in the car while he went inside. When he returned, Perino said Daniel was covered in blood and muttered, "I think he's dead." Other acquaintances recalled Daniel boasting that he had killed Ted at Generosa's urging. Even his father admitted Daniel once asked him how to dispose of evidence. Yet despite these damning accounts, investigators found no physical evidence tying him to the crime. It became a case built almost entirely on testimony. By then, Generosa herself was facing a grim battle. She had been diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. She later accused Ted of indirectly causing her illness, claiming he had been told by her doctor about a lump in her breast years earlier but never informed her. Psychological evaluations painted her as volatile, with traits of borderline, narcissistic, and paranoid personality disorders. In 2003, as her health deteriorated, prosecutors offered Generosa immunity in exchange for testifying before a grand jury. She refused, insisting Daniel had nothing to do with Ted's death. She died on May 20th, 2003, at her East Hampton home. Before her death, Generosa had turned on Daniel. Though they had married in January 2002, his reckless spending disgusted her. By July 2003, she forced him to sign a post-nuptial agreement, granting him $2 million in exchange for not contesting her will. She later rewrote her will to ensure he received only that amount, leaving the rest of her estate to her children and their nanny, who was appointed guardian of Greg and Alexa. Daniel Pelosi challenged the agreement but lost. By 2004, he was standing trial for Ted's murder. He admitted being at the East Hampton house the night of the killing, but denied striking the fatal blows. Instead, he shifted blame onto Generosa, claiming she had orchestrated everything. Witness after witness, however, told jurors that Daniel had bragged about committing the murder himself. On January 25, 2005, Daniel Pelosi was convicted and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Generosa was never formally charged. She died 2 years before Daniel's sentencing, her legacy forever tied to the murder that shattered the Ammon family. Custody of Greg and Alexa was awarded to Ted's sister, Sandra Williams. In her words, she could provide the loving, stable home her brother would have wanted for his children. Years later, in 2012, Greg and Alexa, by then young adults, co-produced a documentary titled 59 Middle Lane, named after the East Hampton house where their father was killed. In it, they confronted their past, tracing their roots back to Ukraine and revisiting the place that had once been their family home. Today, both siblings are in their 30s. Greg pursued filmmaking, while Alexa has lived a more private life. They speak of their father with warmth, describing him as kind, generous, and the steady anchor of their childhood. Their memories of their mother are more complicated, a mix of admiration for her intelligence and charisma, and recognition of the chaos and destruction she brought when Daniel Pelosi entered their lives. Despite everything, they have carried forward their father's legacy, finding stability in the shadow of tragedy. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.